Okay, so I am Alejandro. I am a student in Almazan Lab in Keio University, and today I will speak with you about everyday community spaces in Exurban shrinking cities with a case study in Minami Ashigara in the Kanagawa Prefecture. So in the last year, shrinkage or urban decline has become a growing phenomenon in an increasing number of countries. And in Japan, uneven territorial development, falling fertility rates, and restrictive immigration policy have deepened this phenomenon even more. So Japan is a particularly relevant case because it's a country that has been losing population and aging faster than any other in the OECD since the year 2008. And according to some scholars, if the situation continues like this, the population in the country is expected to decrease in about 20% in the next few decades. And 50% of Japanese municipalities, which you can see here in this map in red, are no longer going to be viable by 2040. And although this trend has been very studied in Japanese rural peripheries, truth is that shrinkage is going to affect also the biggest cities in the country, like Tokyo, also Osaka, or Nagoya. So in these maps, you can check the growing areas in red and the shrinking ones in blue. And by 2020, these big cities are going to lose about 20% of their population. And the people over 65 years will exceed 30% by 2050. So let's put the focus on the Tokyo area here. So Tokyo area peripheries, which you can see here in this map painted in light brown color, expanded very rapidly from the 60s to the 90s. And after the World War II, during the Tokyo reconstruction, these areas were expected to be a green belt to restrain urbanization. But because of the lack of appropriate land use control tools or financial resources for conserving and green spaces, they absorbed the growing urban population and underwent uncontrolled urbanization and urban sprawl. And at the same time, they did not manage to develop an independent identity of the metropolis. And because of this uncontrolled urbanization, the urban fabric mixed a lot of different uses, like urban farming, also housing, and other kind of different uses. So now, with the decline era, there are holes of abandonment appearing in different parts of these cities, and the application of traditional regeneration strategies because this mixture of uses is quite difficult. And according to the Japanese government and to some scholars, these peripheries are the ones expected to experience the highest effects of the population in the coming years. So suburban towns are expected to experience these highest effects of the population in the coming decades, but there is a lack of information since most of the previous research focused on peripheral prefectures and the urban cores. So high-speed growth transformed these Tokyo suburbs into areas of urban sprawl with mixed residential and agricultural areas. So there is an apparent lack of urban structure and independent identity of them, and a dearth of the community spaces. And the application of traditional strategies is quite difficult here. So the question is, how can we design strategies to ameliorate the consequences of the shrinkage while vitalizing these local communities? So local governments are trying to find strategies to enhance the quality of life of the remaining residents of these cities and to vitalize the local community. And we see that mapping the subjective components of place can help unveil the urban structure of these suburban sprawling areas and to propose more rooted regeneration strategies. So you can see here again a map of the Tokyo metropolitan area with growing areas in red and shrinking ones in blue. And I will speak about a specific case study here in a city called Minamiashigara in the Kanagawa Prefecture. So you can see here a picture of this city. And it is a place which was developed around a single kind of industry called Fujifilm, which you can see here on the bottom. And its population increased very rapidly from the 60s to the 90s. And it increased in more than 200% in those years. But since the year 2000, it has been slowly shrinking. And as other suburbs of the Tokyo metropolitan area, is expected to shrink an additional 20% in the following years. So since the 2000s, the city is showing the negative consequences of decline, such as the increasing number of vacant houses, of abandoned shops, of vacant land in the city, etc. So now the city is searching for new strategies to face decline and vitalize this local community. So is this with this context that we want to map the attachment of the residents to everyday life spaces that supports community interaction in order to propose more rooted revitalization strategies. Our method for doing that is semi-structured interviews and mapping to 30 local stakeholders, and we want to know the location and role of these spaces and the urban aspects that need improvement in order to have a more complete vision of the city. So you can see here some of these interviews with the local stakeholders, and on them, we try to cover a wide range of ages and also of local activities. So we interview people carrying out regional and city promotion, also children education, or environmental protection, among others. So with all of these interviews, we find the location of around 1,000 places that supports community interaction inside the city limits and 80 places outside the city boundaries. So we classify them into 8 categories according to the role for the residents into meeting facilities, places related to nature, to exercise, etc. And we also obtain around 400 urban aspects that need improvement, both about the specific location in the city and about world city policies of research. So about the places that we discover inside the city boundaries, we check that the most relevant category are those places designed specifically for the formal encounter, like these community centers here, and it follows some natural spaces like this one, like park, agricultural land, water courses, etc. Also some shops or local supermarkets, also some temples, shrines, places related to city heritage, etc. Also some restaurants and local cafes very relevant for community life, and in a lesser degree, places for exercise, viewpoints, and other kinds of places. So with all of this information, we map these places into evaluative maps with bigger or smaller cycles according to a number of responses and with different colors according to the different categories that we have. And also, we represented the main roads and train lines that the neighbors are using in the daily life. So you can check here some of these spaces like the most historical temple, the roadside station, the local supermarket, etc. We made a similar process for the places outside the city. And in this case, the most relevant category with a huge difference were those shopping centers and supermarkets outside the city limits, also some natural places for specific events, also some brand restaurants and local cafes, or some running, hiking, and cycling routes which connect Minamiashigara with the surrounding cities. And although the sample is too small for making a map of the whole territory, we can have an idea of the routes and lines that the residents are using in their daily life, and also the kind of spaces that they are searching outside the city limits. We also find which are the main urban improvements noted by the participants. And the most important one is the inefficient use of space. So according to interviewees, large amount of abandoned houses and vacant spaces could be easily converted into places useful for the community. They also noted a lack of a mid and long-term urban plan for the city and the lack of the necessary citizen consultation in these urban and tourist plans. They also noted the lack of a distinctive local identity and the absence of spaces different for the surrounding cities. Also, the reduction of some services like clinic or shops in some areas, and also the poor maintenance of central and public spaces like some parks, forests, etc. So I would like to highlight some useful points that we discovered through this research. And the most relevant one has to be with these small places, which does not appear in touristic maps, but they are very relevant for community life. So this resonates with the concept of sweet spots noted by His, which are places particularly relevant for community life, and residents feel particularly rooted too. So they need special care and maintenance. So for example, we have this Raku Cafe here where the residents sell and prepare dishes with local vegetables, and also some natural spaces like these ones, which become quite popular during the summer. We also confirmed the high dependency on the car and the little possibilities of informal day encounters. So communication mainly happens in places, especially designed for the meeting, like these common cans here, which are quite scarce and small in some areas, so they also need special care. And Although some cities are going for centralized revitalization strategies, by the places that we discover, we find several zones of influence in the territory instead of a single central area, which offer different opportunity for regeneration. And also the routes connecting these areas can be also a good opportunity for revitalizing, because they are now in a relative state of abandonment or very oriented to car users. So recovering some of them and making more pedestrian friendly can be also a good opportunity. The residents also state the need to reinforce the local identity and design an urban plan through citizen participation to face this decline. So we think that the sweet spots, the routes, and the places that we discover through this research can potentially become the base of these future regeneration efforts. So Japan population is expected to significantly decrease and age in the coming decades, and suburban towns are expected to experience the highest effects of the population. And because of their character as urban explored areas with mixed residential and agricultural zones, they need specific new revitalization strategies to enhance the quality of life for the remaining residents. So through this research, we map the everyday community spaces in Minamiashigara. And although sprawl is usually considered as devoid of structural centralities in its urban form, we checked that by analyzing subjective aspects of urban explored areas can help us identify clear clusters and structures. So the identified community spaces can be the base for these future regeneration efforts. And we think that this methodology also can be applied to other areas facing similar threats, not only in Japan, but also worldwide. So that's for my presentation. And if you have any questions or you want to contact me, please do so following this email. Thank you so much.